For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. The gospel of our Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. This is the gospel of the Lord. We've heard God's promise to us. Thanks be to God for this word of life. We have heard the word, the story of love. We have heard God's promise. Listen to the story of love. Celebrate God's promise. Go and spread the word, the story of love. Go and share God's promise. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God for this word of life. You may be seated. Vicar Matt informed me last week in the videotaping of the gospel reading and the message, apparently my mic is the only thing that you hear on the recording. So when I mess up in singing, it ain't a pretty thing. We're going to have to do some editing this week. Okay. I want to start off by telling you that I love Peter. Peter in this story. I love Peter, I really do. Because I think Peter, I kind of identify one because he says and does all the things that we would foolishly say and do if we had walked with Jesus during his earthly life. I mean, Peter's forever putting his foot in his mouth and stumbling or biting off more than he can chew. I like Peter because, well, he reminds me of me. He reminds me of you. He reminds me of all of us. In our gospel lesson for this morning, Jesus was teaching his disciples what the Messiah must do. Endure suffering, be rejected, die and rise again. So why this conversation now? It's a little hard to follow since Mark's gospel is jumping around a little bit. Why is he having this conversation with his disciples now? Well, it's because Jesus had just had this conversation with them, asking them, well, who do people say that I am? And the crowds of people that have been following Jesus all over Kingdom Come had all kinds of interesting theories about who he might be. He might be John the Baptist come back to life. He might be Elijah. He might be one of the prophets. But Peter knew, or Peter had a really good hunch that he knew something more, that Jesus wasn't just a teacher or a prophet, that he was something special. And so when Jesus asked, who do you say that I am? Let's get down to brass tacks. Who do you, my disciples, say that I am? He said, you're the Messiah. You're the one we have been waiting for, that Israel has been waiting for such a long time. And he must have been so amazingly excited. I mean, Israel had been expecting great things when the Messiah appeared. According to Jewish expectations, the Messiah would destroy Israel's enemies and would restore the kingdom of Israel to its proper place and usher in just a wonderful time of peace. And if Jesus really was the Messiah, I have to believe that Peter probably thought that, well, this would mean exciting things for him too, big things. I mean, he's one of the leaders, part of the inner circle, really close to the Messiah. So when Jesus turns it around on him and says, well, that being the Messiah means rejection and torture and death, Peter kind of freaks out, completely freaks out. See, it's not that Peter doesn't understand what Jesus is saying. That's not why he tries to correct him. The problem is he understands exactly what Jesus is saying, and he just doesn't like it at all. Peter doesn't like the news, and so he protests. He scolds Jesus. He rebukes Jesus. He takes him aside and tries to set him straight. And can't you imagine his voice saying, no way, That can't be. This is not how this story is supposed to end. The Messiah is the one who's supposed to free us from the Roman Empire, free us from those oppressive taxes, free us from their laws, free us from their brutality, not succumb to it. And even if he didn't say it out loud, you can bet inside he was screaming, and what am I supposed to do when you're dead? I mean, I gave up my life for you. I gave up my life, my home, my family, my income, everything to follow you. For what? For you to die? That's not how my story's supposed to end. So Jesus had to set him straight, and in the process, put him in his place. Jesus rebukes Peter, and this word rebukes refers to an action that Jesus normally only uses when he's casting out demons and evil spirits. That's how the word is used most of the time. And that's kind of like what Jesus is doing with Peter, because you remember what he says? He says, "Get behind me, Satan." It's the guy who was born Simon, and Jesus intentionally changed his name to Peter, whose name means the rock, right? An image that brings to mind images of stability and a good foundation and strength. But now he's Satan, the devil, the evil one. Why? Because Peter was acting just like the devil had in those 40 days when Jesus was wandering in the wilderness. He was tempting Jesus to use his power as the Messiah for himself and not God's mission. Peter was prioritizing the wrong things, according to Jesus. Human things, human achievements, human ambitions, nationalistic ambitions, maybe even personal ambitions. And at the forefront of his priorities, taking his place behind Jesus was not taking his place behind Jesus in the divine plan, God's plan for salvation. He wanted to be out in front. Now, I don't know about you. I identify with Peter, that is true. But every time I read this gospel lesson, it kind of makes me nervous. Because Peter is just like me. On the one hand, he's the rock. On the other hand, he's Satan. On one hand, he is faithful. On the other hand, he is broken. Peter is saint and sinner, as we all are, all the time. And of course, in this moment, Peter has mistaken the Messiah's purpose with his own hopes and dreams. He's conflated them. He's put the two together. He's mistakenly switched one for the other, and that makes me wonder, how often do we do the same kind of thing? How often do we confuse God's plans for our own, or our plans for God's? How often do we hope my will be done while we're praying thy will be done? How often do we get focused on our own hopes and dreams that we begin to imagine are in fact God's hopes and dreams? Remember what Jesus said, though, in this gospel lesson. If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. It wasn't the other way around. I have to admit that I fall into Peter's trap a lot. A lot. It's easy to do. Because following Jesus, denying yourselves means dying a little bit, dying to our own priorities, dying to our own wishes and hopes for ourselves, and putting God's priorities instead in that place. And sometimes that's just a hard sell. We don't like to give up control, right? We don't want to have somebody else in the driver's seat, and even if we do let somebody else drive, we want to be backseat drivers most of the time. We think we know what's best. We think we know instinctively what's going to bring us joy and fulfillment and happiness. And we put the little gods of our life in control of those things. Power and wealth and the illusion of control, holding on to those things desperately, thinking that is the secret to life. We don't want to give up those other little gods. We don't want to give up on what seems like it should be the good life, our good life. Author Tony Campolo suggests that we are actually kind of conditioned to believe this from a very, very early age, and we encounter it in so many ways. He tells us this story about the first time he brought his son to a new school, and he was listening to the principal tell the parents about their children in this way. He says, here at the ding-dong school, we like to think of each child as a little flower, unique and special, one that blossoms and grows in its own special time. The problem, he says, is the kid grows up thinking he's so special that he's the only one that matters. That's the danger. But then that child grows up and they get a job at, McDonald's or General Motors or Andersen Windows, and you can guarantee that the CEO of any of those companies doesn't say to new hires, here at Andersen Windows, we think of each employee as a little flower, unique and special, one that blossoms and grows in its own special time. I never heard anything from HR like that. See, in community, whether it's the community of a corporation, a job, a church, a marriage, a friendship, or the community of the entire world, there is a need to leave our own personal goals and wants and wishes sometimes behind, to deny ourselves those things that we might wish for, and to work together for the best of the group as a whole. That's what it means to deny yourself. It's to recognize the bigger needs of the whole group, to place our own needs as secondary. An admirer once asked the great Leonard Bernstein, the great orchestra conductor, what is the hardest instrument to play? And he said without any reservation at all, second fiddle. Said, I could always find all kinds of first violinists. But the one who plays second violin with as much enthusiasm and passion, the one that plays second flute or second French horn, now that's a challenge to find. And yet if nobody plays second, there's no harmony. There's no symphony. There's no beauty in the music. As Christians, as followers of Jesus, we are, by definition, those who are called to play second fiddle. Our motto should be, I'm number 2, not I'm number 1. We're called to be the ones that put God in the driver's seat, willingly, happily, making others, the priority of others and the group as a whole, our priority. Is it hard as it might be for us to instinctively believe it? Jesus says that this is the way we're going to find our life, the life that we are intended to live, the life that will bring fulfillment and joy and purpose. He says it this way, for those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. There's this doctor who lived in Michigan, Dr. Arthur Turi. And he was a pediatrician who came to Flint, Michigan in 1948 to work in Mott's Children's Health Center. And during his time there, he helped a mother who died in childbirth by taking care of her child until it could be adopted. And from that experience, he was inspired to start the Flint Area Health Foundation to help provide for help for needy children. And for years, he was the head of Mott's Children's Hospital, which offered medical care and dental care to those same children. And Dr. Turi said that many people ask me why I devote my life to the poor and the disadvantaged when I could be in private practice and a wealthy man. I tell them, knowing from whence I came and the fact that the greatest healer of all time, Jesus Christ, said, when you do it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. it's enough. It's enough for my purpose. It's enough for a goal. It is enough to play my part in God's mission. It is enough. And the rest of it just doesn't matter. See, denying yourself is all about kind of wanting to lose your life for Christ's sake. This life of following is a life where we naturally kind of want to play second fiddle and to play it with joy, to play it with passion, to play it with enthusiasm. We've got to mean it when we say, I'm number 2 and you, God, are number 1. But when we deny ourselves and take up our crosses, our personal, unique instruments of death, where we allow ourselves, part of our lives, to be willingly killed for the sake of being number 2, for the sake of entering into God's mission, Jesus promises it's in that place that we are going to find life. We're going to find joy. We're going to find happiness. We're going to find purpose. This is where our true life lies. In this life and eternally. And I personally can't think of any better reward.